All right, everyone, let's dive into something pretty heavy today. We're talking biliary atresia and some really groundbreaking research.
hmm
We all know how challenging this disease is, but what if I told you there might be a completely different way to think about it, like something that could totally change how we treat it? We're looking at a research paper today that's seriously shaking things up. It's not just adding some new facts, it's like opening a whole new chapter in biliary atresia research. For a long time now, the main theory has been that a virus might be triggering the immune system to attack the bile ducts in these babies, right?
Yeah, that's been the prevailing theory for sure.
But this research team, they decided to take a look at something completely different, something called the microvasculature. So, could you give us a quick breakdown what that is exactly?
Sure. The microvasculature, it's basically the network of all those tiny blood vessels, the capillaries. They're like the delivery system, making sure every single part of the body gets oxygen and nutrients. Think of it like a fragile web that keeps every cell alive.
Okay, so instead of just looking at the bile ducts themselves, these researchers were zeroing in on the blood vessels all around them. What made them go down that road?
Well, they were trying to get a better picture of the environment where this bile duct damage happens. So they used a mouse model. They infected the mice with rotavirus to study the disease in a really controlled way.
Ah, the classic mouse model. It's amazing what we can learn from them.
Right. It's really valuable for this kind of research.
Absolutely. So they've got their mouse model, they're looking at blood vessels. What did they find? What's the big reveal here?
Well, they tracked how the disease progressed in these mice, and they used some very high-tech imaging to actually observe the blood vessels around the bile ducts. I'm talking about things like whole mount imaging and electron microscopy. They weren't messing around.
Wow, so they're really looking at this from every angle. What do they see?
They saw something pretty shocking. So in the healthy mice, there's this beautiful, intricate network of capillaries surrounding the bile duct, all delivering blood and nutrients like they're supposed to. But in the mice infected with the virus, well,
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting.
exactly. In the infected mice, that intricate network was being destroyed, like bit by bit. The capillaries were decreasing, they were getting wider, and some of them were just dying off completely. And get this destruction. It started happening before there was any visible damage to the bile duct itself.
Hold on, are you saying the damage to these tiny blood vessels was already happening, even before any of the classic signs of biliary atresia were showing up?
Mhm.
That's a huge deal.
It is huge. It really challenges what we thought we knew about how this disease develops. Now it's looking like the damage to the blood vessels, this support system for the bile ducts, that might be the main event, the thing that kicks it all off.
So it might not be the virus directly attacking the bile ducts, but rather something happening first that weakens these blood vessels, making the bile ducts vulnerable.
That's what this research is pointing to, yeah.
Wow. So if it's not the virus directly attacking those blood vessels,
Right.
what is causing all this destruction? What did the researchers find out?
Well, they think it might be inflammation, how your body naturally responds to an injury or infection.
Right, like when you sprain your ankle and it swells up, that's inflammation. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like your body sending in the troops to help. But sometimes, too much of a good thing.
And it can actually end up causing more harm than good.
That's what they're thinking might be happening here. See, this study, they found that the types of immune cells hanging out around the bile duct, they actually changed over time. It's like this whole intricate inflammatory process is going on.
So it's not just that there's inflammation, but also which immune cells are involved and how that changes over time.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. It's like a domino effect. One thing leads to another, and eventually those vital blood vessels, they just can't take it anymore.
It's amazing how the body works, trying to heal itself. But sometimes those healing mechanisms, well, they can backfire.
Exactly. And in this case, it's those blood vessels that are caught in the crossfire.
Okay, so this is where it starts to get really interesting for me. If we could figure out what that domino effect is, that chain reaction, maybe we could stop it, right?
Now you're thinking like a scientist. That's the hope. This study gives us a great place to start. They found that a specific structure, it's called the parabiliary vascular plexus.
But what?
The parabiliary vascular plexus. It's a mouthful, I know, but it's basically that network of tiny blood vessels we've been talking about. And it looks like it's a major target in this whole inflammatory mess.
Parabiliary vascular plexus. Okay, I think I got it.
Don't worry about the name too much. What's important is that this network of blood vessels, it's not just a bystander. It's a key player. And that changes how we need to think about treating biliary atresia.
So instead of just focusing on the bile ducts, we need to figure out how to protect those blood vessels, right? It's like making sure the foundation of a house is strong so the rest of it doesn't crumble.
Perfect analogy. It's about supporting those bile ducts, making sure they're getting what they need to stay healthy.
It's about getting to the root of the problem, not just treating the symptoms.
And in this case, protecting those blood vessels, making sure the bile ducts are getting all the oxygen and nutrients they need, well, that could be the key to preventing biliary atresia from wreaking havoc.
Okay, now this is where I really start to get excited. If this damaged vascular plexus, this blood vessel network, is happening before we even see the signs of biliary atresia, could we diagnose it earlier?
It's definitely a possibility. If we could find some sort of marker, something that tells us those blood vessels are in trouble, we might be able to diagnose biliary atresia way earlier before the bile ducts are damaged beyond repair.
An early diagnosis, that could be a complete game changer for these kids.
Oh, absolutely. With biliary atresia, catching it early is crucial. The sooner we can start treatment, the better the chances are for these kids to live long, healthy lives.
This is incredible. So we've got this potential for earlier diagnosis, maybe even new treatments that target the root of the problem. This is huge, but this is a deep dive after all. So let's get real for a second. What are the limitations of this study? What don't we know yet? So we found this hidden doorway, this whole other side to biliary atresia, and we're just starting to peek inside. There's a lot to be excited about, but we've got to be careful, right? We need to figure out what it all really means.
I like that, the hidden doorway. You're right, we can't get ahead of ourselves. One thing to remember is that this study, it was done in a lab with mice. And as great as mouse models are, well, they don't always show us exactly what's going to happen in humans.
That makes sense. So the big question that when everyone's asking is, does this translate to human babies? How do we take this discovery and actually help kids who are dealing with biliary atresia?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And researchers, they're already on it. The next step is to see if we can find those same markers of vascular damage, those same patterns, but in infants who have been diagnosed with biliary atresia.
And if they do find those same patterns, what then? What's next?
Well, that's when things could get really interesting treatment-wise. If we can find a way to protect that parabiliary vascular plexus, we might actually be able to stop this disease in its tracks, or at least slow it down considerably.
Wow. So would we be talking about completely new treatments, ones that are specifically designed to target these blood vessels, or could we maybe use some of the treatments that are already out there?
Honestly, I think both are on the table at this point. There's already research happening right now on medications that help keep blood vessels healthy and reduce inflammation. If those human studies pan out, if we see those same damage patterns, some of those existing treatments, they might be a game changer for biliary atresia.
So there's hope that maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that something's already out there that could make a real difference.
I think that's a really good way to put it. And beyond medications, we're also talking about a whole new way to think about diagnosing this disease. Imagine being able to identify those babies, the ones who are most at risk, before any serious, irreversible damage happens.
It's incredible to think about. Catching it that early, it could mean less invasive treatments, better outcomes for these kids. It could change everything.
It really could. This research has the potential to completely change how we think about biliary atresia, from how we understand it, to how we diagnose it, to how we treat it.
We started this deep dive talking about a whole new angle on this disease, and that almost feels like an understatement now. This is huge.
It really is. It just goes to show how important scientific curiosity is. You never know what you're going to find when you really start digging into something, when you don't give up. And those unexpected discoveries, well, they're often the ones that lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
Breakthroughs that have the power to change lives. Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
Biliary atresia, it's a tough one, but we're learning more all the time. This research, it gives us a lot of hope. By shifting our focus, by looking at those blood vessels that support the bile ducts, we might be on the verge of a whole new era in biliary atresia diagnosis and treatment. We might be able to finally get ahead of this disease and make a real difference for these kids.
That's a powerful message of hope. And it's a good reminder that in medicine, there's always more to learn. We just had to keep asking questions, keep pushing the boundaries of what we think we know. And who knows, maybe on the other side of those questions, there are even more amazing breakthroughs waiting for us. Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive, everyone. Keep your minds open, keep those questions coming, and we'll see you next time.